Hello, everyone, and welcome to EllieMD's weekly educational series. I'm Honey Sagari, founder and CEO of EllieMD, and we're so excited to have you with us as we continue our mission to help people live longer, healthier lives. At EllieMD, we believe in empowering individuals through education and community and innovative healthcare solutions for vibrant living. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Megan Davies, an NSCA certified personal trainer, gym owner, and Supertrainer for the online platform BODi. On today's call, Megan will share expert tips on training smarter, not harder. We'll discuss effective protocols for gaining muscle, losing fat, and feeling great while discovering how to optimize your workouts for long-term results and overall well-being. As mentioned, Megan is an NSCA personal trainer, gym owner, and Supertrainer for the online platform BODi. With her HIT programs, #MBF muscle burns fat, and Sure Thing, Megan has helped thousands of people regain their energy, strength, and confidence. Known for her straightforward guidance and upbeat personality, Megan is passionate about helping individuals achieve their best physical shape and live their healthiest lives. Well, look at that. Welcome, Megan. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, likewise. So can you tell us a little about your background and your personal story and journey of how you became a personal trainer?
Absolutely. So my journey looks a little bit different probably than most people. I kind of randomly fell into doing figure and fitness competitions when I was very young. I was 14. And so I just kind of like started strength training in order to do these competitions. And I fell in love with the strength training. I'm a little bit of an introvert too. So I also fell in love with the fact that I could like go in, do my workout kind of solo and still be able to compete in things, which I liked as well. So I started doing that very young, and it actually snowballed into a family effect. So at the time, like I said, I very much fell into it because my family, while I was very active, my family was very sedentary. And as a whole, we had terrible eating habits. I think back to what early 2000s, this is probably the time of like anything fat free, right? We thought was healthy. So if it said fat free on the box or on the label, it was like that was it, sugar free. So I always joke and say I grew up on like diet soda and fat free Hot Pockets and, sugar free anything. So that was our lifestyle, very sedentary until I kind of fell into this. And my family, my parents were doing everything for me to kind of help me along this journey and to learn about nutrition and to help me in the kitchen and things like that. But they weren't doing anything for themselves. And so there was a conversation that I had with my dad at one of my competitions where I just looked at him and I was like, Daddy, I feel so sorry for you. And he's like sitting there like, you're my, at the time, 16, 17-year-old daughter. What do you feel sorry for me for? And I said, you're doing all these things for me, but I can see how stressed out you are. Like, I know that you're working yourself into the ground at work and you're stressed out all the time and you're not taking care of yourself. I always say that your kids kind of want you to be happy and healthy, just like you want that for them. And that's where I was coming from. And so at the time he was 47 years old, and he decided by the time he was 50, he was going to lose the weight that he needed to lose, which was over 100 pounds at the time, and that he wanted to get on stage with me. And his goal was like, I just want to lose the weight, put on some muscle, and not embarrass myself, is what he said. But he actually ended up taking it to the next level, and he ended up winning the men's over masters 50 division for his bodybuilding show. And during this entire process, because it was a 3-year journey, the rest of my family started getting involved. My mom's thing was dance. My brother got involved. He was like a gamer, very sedentary, but he got involved in more activity. And as we started to make transformations, our friends and family were like, what are you doing? We need to do it too. And so we just started kind of helping people that way. From my dad's garage at first, it moved into a park. And now the gym I own is actually a family-owned gym in Coral Springs. So that's kind of like what snowballed the whole thing, was like this big family transformation.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing your story. It's beautiful. Um, Can you share with us? And by the way, if you guys don't follow Megan on Instagram, I highly, highly recommend that you do. And we'll get to that at the end, but go follow her because she has she posts tips, tricks, videos, and oh, it's awesome. I love watching your stories. But Megan, can you talk to us about what training smarter versus harder means to you? How is that different than just
Absolutely. I think people have an idea, good or bad, of what, training means to them or how they want to feel when they train. And for the most part, some people realize that all these feelings aren't necessarily like what we need to feel for an effective workout. But for the most part, people want to feel like breathless. They want to feel super sweaty. They want to feel the burn. They want to see the burn on their watch. They want to feel a little sore the next day. Even for me, like I get caught up in that idea of what the workout needs to feel like, to the point where if I saw I don't naturally sweat. I'm just not somebody who sweats a lot. So if I see somebody working out next to me and they're sweating like profusely, I'm like, man, I want to sweat like that. When in reality, it's not necessarily an indication of a great workout. I could be working out just as hard, and I'm just not a sweaty person. As much as I want to be when I'm in that moment of working out, I'm just not. So we have this like expectation of what it needs to feel like. And I think we also have an expectation of what it needs to like. It needs to almost encompass our entire lives. I feel like, that's what people expect. I need to spend hours in the gym every single day. And I need to, consume my life with what I'm putting in my mouth. And that expectation really is exhausting when we look at it. It is anxiety producing because we know that more is not always best. That's kind of my tagline. More is not always best. And so I want to be smarter about it. So training smarter is about kind of maximizing the efficiency and the effectiveness of your workouts rather than just thinking I need to go into the gym and push harder and harder, because honestly, like anybody can go into the gym and work out till they feel sick. Like, but is that making you better? Probably not. We want that effectiveness. So training smarter is goal oriented. It is technique informed driven. So that quality of movement over quantity. It recognizes the importance of rest, which we'll definitely talk about today. Not only in between workouts, but also during the workout, in between sets. It also takes into account your life and what is realistic time-wise for you. You might have heard people say, like, we all have the same 24 hours in the day, which is true to some extent, but a little bit it drives me crazy because I can use myself as an example. As a trainer who, yes, I'm busy. I have an online company. I have a brick and mortar company and I'm busy, but as a trainer, there's a little bit of flexibility in there. And so I have a flexible schedule. I don't have kids. I don't have a dog. I have a supportive partner, supportive family. So me getting into the gym for an hour, when I want to go into the gym looks a lot different than somebody who might be trying to go into the gym that has, kids and a dog and a 9 to 5 in the office. Maybe they're a caretaker for another family member. There's very real obstacles that are in our path that are keeping us from starting and maintaining a training program. So at the end of the day, I think training smarter to me really means that we're helping you navigate that instead of just dumping one more thing onto your already overwhelmed plate, right?
No, I love that. So, on that topic, how can someone determine the right training program that fits their body and goals without overtraining?
So for me, I think I want to like really encourage people to find something that they truly find passion in, that they love, that they find joy in. I don't think we talk about that enough, that we kind of try to fit a square peg into a round hole, so to speak, and we're forcing people into certain maybe exercise programs that they're like, I don't really find joy in this. And there's a certain extent that I'm like, yeah, I really want to push for that. But then there's also the part of me that knows, for instance, that if that were the case for me, if I was only looking for things I find joy in, I would never do a cardiovascular workout in my life. Like, I am a weights girly. I would never get my heart rate up if that were the case, that I got to choose and pick exactly what I like and only do that. And I need a little bit of cardiovascular training in my life, right, for overall health and fitness. So I always look for a well-rounded approach. I don't look for that like one thing that I just love, but I want to make sure I have this like well-rounded approach. I want to set people up, my clients up, with a minimum expectation that we can build on. So that minimum expectation just means like, I need you to be strength training, even if it's not like your joy, your passion. I need a little bit of strength training. I need a little bit of cardiovascular training. We'll talk about what this looks like. But then I can add things on top of that that maybe I do truly love, that don't fit exactly into these like pieces, that, you know, maybe I really like yoga and Pilates and things like that. We can start adding and building onto our experience from there. So I always like to start, first of all, with, are we generally active? Like, before we even talk about workouts and structured exercise, are we generally active in our day? Because we have a saying in my gym, we say, do more in 164. And that saying is because I'm expecting that people coming into my gym are at least going to come in 4 times a week for about an hour. So that means there's 168 hours in the week. And if they come in 4 hours a week, that means there's 164 hours that they are not actively working out. And so we start to realize, like, wow, we're putting a whole lot of emphasis on our workouts to be the thing that makes us active, when in reality, there's so much more to being active. So that's always my first question is, are we generally active? And that comes from not sitting all day. That comes from getting up from behind our desk periodically, taking the stairs when we can, parking in the back of the parking lot at the supermarket, walking all the way in, taking your cart all the way out, walking your cart all the way back in. And these little things throughout the day usually add up to quite a bit more than we expect. This is like non-exercise activity. So that's the first thing. And it adds up to a lot of calories burned during the day too. So that's the first thing that I ask is, are we generally active? The second thing, then we can start kind of asking for that minimum threshold of our actual structured workouts. So then I'm going to ask for 2 days of strength training. Again, this is a minimum expectation. So at least 2 days of strength training. It could be full body. You could split it up to an upper body day and a lower body day. However you kind of want to split that up. At minimum, I'm asking for that 2 days of structured strength training. And we'll definitely talk about how we can break that down too. Cardiovascular training. First of all, walking is great. It's important, and we can incorporate that daily. But that's not exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about this cardiovascular training. I'm asking for cardiovascular training 1 to 2 times a week that gets our heart rate up to challenge something called our VO2 max. And our VO2 max is a measure of cardiovascular health and endurance. And just like muscle, it's something that decreases with age. So it's something we want to train and maintain. What it actually is how much oxygen can we consume and utilize when our heart rate is very high, when we're at those higher intensity bouts of exercise. And so when I can start getting my heart rate up, I'm training myself cardiovascularly, and we want that 1 to 2 times a week. All right, so that's my minimum. And then of course, we're going to add in some mobility and rest in there. We need that rest, but we're going to get plenty of rest time if we're getting those 3 days a week in. We're going to have plenty of off days. So we'll talk about mobility and rest as well. So if you're doing the math with me, what I asked for general activity. I asked for at minimum 2 days of strength training, and I asked for at least 1 day of that cardiovascular activity when we're getting our heart rate up to those higher levels. So that's, again, that starting point. And honestly, I'd even be happy if we're really beginners at 2 days a week, but let me be bold and ask you for the 3 days a week. And it is one of those things, if we have this minimum standard in our lives, then it's really good for busy people too, to look at it and say, okay, I can probably get into a workout routine 3 days a week at minimum. And this is going to help me have some of the health benefits, some of the muscle building and maintaining benefits that we see with our structured exercise program. So those are kind of the minimum things that I'm asking for. And then again, like I said, we can start building from there. So I'm asking for the 3 days a week, but if I like yoga and Pilates, amazing. I can add another day or two there. If I'm a cardio athlete, like I like running my 5Ks and my half marathons, obviously I might need some more cardiovascular training in my programming. And so I can add more cardiovascular days during the week. If you're a strength training person like me, then we can go up 4 or 5 days of strength training if we want to. Like everything above that 3 to me is a bonus. Until we get to overtraining, which was the second part of your question, because overtraining can be from excessive exercise. I would say that I mostly find that in athletes. I mostly find that in people that are like pro, they have to do their 2-a-days and things like that. And they get to a point of overtraining, but it can come from what I call, like myself, a general fitness enthusiast. It can come from us too when we get a little too carried away with our exercise routine or just doing the same things over and over again. But it also comes from under recovering, which we don't talk about enough, and under fueling, which we don't talk about enough. So we have this expectation where we want to train harder and longer, but we also are trying to probably lose fat in the process for many of us. So we start like eating less and recovering less. And this is where we run into those problems. These two things can't support each other. So finding that balance a little bit more is really, to me, the key to the overtraining factor. Like I said, most of us are just trying to get in a few exercise days a week, so we don't have to worry so much about that. But if we are starting to find our groove in fitness, so to speak, and we are starting to see, okay, I'm adding a little something in that's structured each day, am I overtraining? Then really some of the things that we want to start looking at is the food and the rest component of that overtraining.
Yeah, let's talk about that because I was obsessed with my HRV and my Aura ring, and I still, and for those of you who don't know what HRV is, it's a heart rate variability, and it measures. I mean, I read that it's a great indicator of longevity and how your body's recovering, but also, yes, rest and recovery. So can you talk to us about the importance of rest and recovery while working out and in general?
Absolutely. I think this is probably something I try to scream from the rooftops more than anything else to my clients. It's not even the working out, it's the rest and recovery in between that makes the change happen for us. We tend to make the mistake of thinking that the changes are happening during our workout, and some are happening during the workout, but the change happens actually in recovery. So when we work out, we're creating damage to our muscle tissue. We are actually creating in our workout a stimulus for the change. And so when we have that opportunity to rest and recover, not only rest and recover, and I mean rest and recover, meaning rest days between workouts. I mean enough sleep, 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And I know that's hard. And I know, it depends on if we have kids. It depends on if we're hitting those menopausal years. Like there's so many things that can interrupt our sleep. So that is just an ask, a request to work on it. But I know it's difficult, but it is that sleep. It is also making sure that we're fueling enough in between workouts, and all of those things equal that recovery process. So we work out, we create that stimulus, we create a little damage to our muscle tissue, and then our body goes in and it wants to repair those muscle fibers. But it also kind of says like, okay, I know this is a crazy person. I know that they're getting into this workout routine. I know that they are going to work out again pretty soon. And I want to better be able to withstand this exercise that they're doing. So they're going to go in and they're going to build up that muscle a little bit stronger than last time. So that's when all the good stuff happens, is in that recovery time. So if I am go, 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 go all the time, and I never give my body that opportunity to repair from that stimulus, frankly, has real consequences. And what you are going to notice is that you're more tired and you're hitting plateaus, but also your nervous system and your immune system and your endocrine system are like literally fighting for their lives. And if you find that you're getting more colds and you're moody and you're getting injured more and your performance is decreasing, that's all an indication that we are just not resting and recovering the way we need to. So I cannot stress the importance of that work to rest ratio enough here. And again, my little tagline from the beginning is more is not always better.
Oh, I love that you bring that up. Can you talk to us about some common mistakes people make when training to lose fat or gain muscle? How can they avoid that?
Yeah. So we talked about a couple. I mean, I think recovery is one of the biggest mistakes we make because, again, we want to feel that feeling of, working out and doing so much. And when we rest, we almost feel lazy. And that's a mental thing that we need to switch. Like so much of this is like undoing past learned behaviors. We spent many years in the fitness industry driving home that we need to eat less, that we need to work more. And now we're coming to, smarter guidelines of what our training needs to look like. And that requires a lot of undoing for many of us. So when it comes to fat loss, I think one of the biggest issues that I see is, again, we're so programmed for many years since we were kids to think weight loss is about eating less and less and less food to a point where we are eating 800, 1200 calories a day. And when we are trying to get into an exercise regimen and we are getting up every day, we're going to work, we're doing things with our kids, we're walking the dog, we have, very full active daily lives. On top of that, we're trying to add in this exercise routine and be generally active, like we were talking about before. That's a lot. It requires a lot of energy. So at this point, as a grown person who is trying to do all these things in life, 800 to 1200 calories is just not effective. It is not supporting you. So I would say finding a more modest calorie deficit is really key. 300 to 500 calorie deficit and prioritizing protein is a lot better for not only not going on the roller coaster we find ourselves on, which is I'm going to diet, so I'm going to crash diet by bringing my calories super low and exercise a lot. And now I'm exhausted and all the things are happening we talked about. I'm getting sick and I'm tired. And so something's got to give at some point, and then I do nothing. That's the roller coaster ride. But if we find a smaller caloric deficit, if we set that minimum guideline to our expectations of activity and working out, then we can start leveling off that roller coaster and we can start finding a little bit more consistency in our training. We can find also that it's going to help us maintain as much muscle as possible through maybe a fat loss phase. Many of us are looking to lose fat, and part of that process might be that we see a little bit of muscle loss and we want to mitigate that as much as possible. So that smaller calorie deficit and the prioritizing protein is really going to help, again, minimize that muscle loss as much as possible, along with the additional strength training. So I think that's the thing with fat loss. Some common mistakes for building muscle. Muscle is really about showing up for your workouts. So I think the common mistakes are we're not sticking to a plan. We're doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and we don't have any progressive overload. We're not challenging ourselves a little bit more with each workout or each week or each month. And then the last thing I think is not being patient on either of them, on either our nutrition side and losing fat, or on our working outside and gaining muscle, because these things take time. And a lot of time we have some sort of goal set in our mind, right? We're like, I have this wedding, I have this vacation, like I'm trying to do this in 1 month. And I'm like, 1 month, like, great. I'm glad that that was a motivation for you to get started. And we will, do our best to give you the changes that you want to see, because that's very motivating in the lot of time. But also, again, a mindset shift of this is training for life. This is no longer training for a certain event that's taking place 1, 2, 3 months in the future, but this is, I want to be my strongest, healthiest self moving into the future. And that means I'm showing up a little bit for myself each day, as opposed to the roller coaster ride. So I think if we work on nutrition and some consistency and some patience, it will go a long way for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because as you know, we have a lot of patients that are on GLP-1s, and it's tough for including myself, it's difficult to get your protein in. And, muscle atrophy does happen with any sort of weight loss program. Like you lose 20% of your muscle, and muscle is so important for longevity and so important for your overall well-being, health, to protect your body. Can you talk to us and just emphasize and I mean, we've been talking about it over and over for the last couple of weeks, but I want everyone to hear it from you, the importance of muscle. And one more time, just reiterate, like, the protein aspect of it, of getting adequate protein and nutrition. But can you talk to us a little about the importance of muscle?
Absolutely. Luckily, I feel like I fell into just falling in love with strength training from such a young age. Like like to me, that's like probably one of the most fortunate things that could have happened. Not only for where it's brought me in life, but also as I'm starting to get older, I'm just looking into the future and I'm like, I again want to be my most active, healthiest, best self. And I had the grandparents that couldn't get up off the couch or were afraid of even getting out of bed and falling. Because not only does that come from muscle loss, because we are starting to feel frail and unsure of ourselves, but we're also starting to see bone loss because we haven't been having that training, that impact, that strength building. So between the muscle loss and the bone loss, as we get older, these issues are just going to compound, not only in a way where metabolically we become unhealthy, but again, that like I'm not sure that I can take that step off the curb without falling over and breaking my hip. And I just recently went to a seminar that was for menopausal women's health, and the orthopedic surgeon there was talking about how there is in elderly populations, 70% are going to fall and have some sort of issue from a fall that ends them up in her clinic. And then she said, which was really shocking to me, out of that 70%, 30% are actually going to have some sort of issue where they end up dying because of that fall. Now, it might not be directly related to that fall. Maybe they catch pneumonia when they went into the hospital. But these are all things that we want to mitigate as much as possible. So it is going to make you more metabolically healthy, and it is going to keep you healthy and strong to enjoy your kids and your grandkids as you get older. I mean, I think for me, that's what's really motivating me to continue on this journey. For many years, I was an athlete. In college, I did the figure and fitness competitions for many years. And at some point, I transferred out of that. And I was like, what's my purpose in working out right now? And I just came to the conclusion that it was just to take care of myself now. And that is equally, if not more important than the athlete version of myself. So kind of like, really taking a look at what you want your future to look like, because it is going to exponentially be better because of muscle. It is your longevity maker is muscle. So I can't, again, I know you're emphasizing it too, but I can't emphasize it enough. And from the protein aspect, I always like to give like not the this is the correct number, but the gauge from start to finish of what we're looking at. So it's 0.36 grams per pound is our RDA. 0.36 grams of protein per pound is the RDA. That's the recommended daily allowance. That's the very bare minimum of what we need to have. As we start getting into like the 0.6, 0.8 grams of protein per pound is when we start to see the benefits of being able to support building and maintaining our muscle mass. And then we start to see that a lot of active people, and especially like those trying to put on a little bit more muscle and they're very active, will even start pushing that up to the 1 gram of protein per pound. And there's a little bit of a conversation that starts happening as we start coming out of that like 0.6 to 0.8 range and start heading up to the 1 gram. There's a conversation of like, are we utilizing this effectively? Are we like in our workouts, are we able to consume and actually utilize that amount of protein? Maybe not, but also I always look at it from just a feeling full standpoint. As somebody who's active, that point is really important. We want to feel full and satisfied, because if you're not and you're really active, you're just going to be thinking it's that food noise of, oh, when's my next meal? How much can I eat? Like, how many hours am I going to wait? Like, and we don't want to be distracted like that from food. So if that happens to you and you want to start playing with those higher ranges, then it's something we can always experiment with, see how we feel, and adjust accordingly from there. Nothing's ever fixed, and that's the game of health and fitness. A little experimentation, seeing what works, and tweaking from there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for touching on the muscle and the protein intake part, because I think especially as women, and I see a lot of women on this call, we're a lot more vulnerable to having osteoporosis because of the childbirth and so forth. And something fascinating I learned is like, actually, duh, it makes sense. The bone starts to, I guess, the structure built when you're using your muscles and you're stimulating the bone through using your muscles. And that's how you keep your bone strong. So you need the muscle to keep your bones strong. And you're absolutely right. I mean, being from the world of home healthcare was my 2 careers ago. Yes, once you saw patients fall, that's it. The downward spiral typically started from there, and within months you saw them deteriorate, unfortunately. So thank you for touching on that. Bone health, muscle, very, very important. Let's shift gears and start talking about losing fat a little bit. What's your take on HIIT or high intensity interval training for fat loss? What's most effective and how should it be used?
Absolutely. So one thing I want to like kind of back up before I talk about the HIIT training a little bit, because the key there was like most effective for fat loss. And for fat loss, when we really look at how much energy, how many calories we're expending during the day, our workout is actually a very small percentage of that. So when we look at total daily energy expenditure, you can find like a chart if you Google it, total daily energy expenditure chart. It shows you how much of our calories each day are being burned from different things, right? The biggest amount of calories that we burn is just our basal metabolic rate. It's how many calories we need if we don't even get out of bed, but our body has a lot to do during the day of building things up, breaking things down, brain function, our heart's beating, we're blinking, all the little things that we don't think about that we're doing is actually burning a lot of calories, and it's up to like 70% of our calories. And then it gets to be like, okay, how much energy do we expend from consuming food and breaking that food down? How much calories do we expend from our NEAT calories that we were talking about earlier, that non-exercise activity? And so all of these things actually make up like 90 to 95% of our calorie burn for the day. And then it's like 5 to 10% that actually comes from our workouts. So sometimes I also think, just like I was saying, that sometimes we expect too much when we're looking at, okay, the 4 hours a week in comparison to the 164 hours a week that we might be sitting at our desk and more sedentary. Same thing here. We're expecting a lot out of our workout when actually there's just this little bit that's actually contributing to the overall calories burned. On top of that, we have just behaviors that make us want to equal out. So if I do a hard workout and I really burn a lot of calories and I'm feeling good about that, there's things that my body does to kind of counteract that and bring me back to that even playing field as far as my energy and my calories are concerned. So one of the things that my body does is it slows me down. I get more tired that day. I expended a lot of energy, and now my body's just naturally bringing me back to a place where I'm not as active as I would be during the rest of the day, those NEAT activities. I'm sitting around a little bit more. I'm like, oh man, I'm so tired today. And so that lack of activity for the rest of the day is going to kind of bring me back down to that even playing field. Or I'm more hungry during the day because I did all that extra activity. And so I'm going to maybe consume a few more calories than I realize. And again, my body is doing everything it can to kind of even me out. So when I take a look at fat loss and workouts and activity, I just want to make sure that we're really considering it a small layer of the overall picture. And for fat loss, we're really kind of like focusing more on what does my nutrition look like? How much protein am I getting? Do I feel full and satisfied? Am I, looking at correct portion sizes and things like that? Because, and am I getting enough fiber is a big one. So those kinds of things are really going to make the most impact for our fat loss. And then our exercise adds that layer on top as far as calories burned, of course, muscle gained, increasing that BMR and all of that good stuff. So we did talk earlier about, I want you to do some activity during the week that pushes that, your capacity for getting your heart rate up. That is really important for our cardiovascular health. Like I said, I'm not the fan of cardio, but I can see from just a health perspective why I need to get my heart rate up, get my heart and my circulation going. That is also a part of our overall health that we want to take care of as we get older. And HIIT training falls in line with that. And I've seen a big kind of like we're falling back from HIIT training because we are worried about a couple of things. And one of the things that we're worried about is like a cortisol response, right? And it's something that we do need to manage for sure. We need to be aware of it. We want to make sure that, again, we're balancing our workouts and we're getting enough rest time and enough nutrients in a way that's going to help us manage that cortisol response, that we are doing the, breathing or the journaling or the meditation or whatever helps you kind of de-stress at the end of the day. All of those things are going to help that. But at the end of the day, yes, like we have cortisol for a reason. When we wake up in the morning, it's going to be a little bit higher. If we have a workout, it's going to be a little bit higher. And if we don't have an issue with chronically high levels of cortisol, then what happens is what cortisol is made to do, that it's going to increase a little bit and it's going to come back down. And I think the issue with HIIT training really came from many years of doing HIIT training every single day. It was like, oh, this is the fat loss, key. And so all of a sudden it became like all or nothing. I'm doing HIIT training in my, fitness class 5 days a week. That's really where we start seeing an issue with that kind of problem. So if we just add it in, like I said, that 1 to 2 times a week where we're really getting into those higher intensities, challenging our VO2 max, getting our heart rate up, it can be so beneficial for our cardiovascular health. So don't be afraid of that HIIT training, because yes, it's going to have a metabolic effect for you, an afterburn effect between the HIIT training and our strength training, where we're just burning more calories through the day after that workout. So I don't want to scare you off. I don't want you to be like Megan said, that our workouts don't even matter for fat loss. No, they do. But it is the layer, right? And so we are going to have that effect. And just a little mood boost too, I think, is really important. So all of those things add up, and adding that HIIT training 1 or 2 times a week is an amazing choice.
Now, let me ask you about plateauing in your weight loss. So we have a lot of people that take GLP-1s, as I mentioned, and a lot do plateau. Now, some of it has to do with nutrition. They're not getting enough calories, they're not getting protein. However, when you do plateau from an exercise perspective, what should you do in order to overcome that weight loss plateau, specifically fat loss plateau?
Yeah, for me, I always kind of like take a step back. I think it is very typical for when we hit a plateau, think like, okay, I'm doing everything wrong and I need to like throw out everything but the kitchen sink and start over. And so people tend to like completely throw out whatever nutrition that they were doing and say, okay, there must be a different answer to what I'm doing that's going to be a better choice for me. And they're trying to get into something new. Same thing with the workouts that we start trying to like shift or do more and more and more because we think that's going to help. So for me, I think the answer is really to take a step back first and really look at overall what's going on in life right now. So yes, we can take a look at just general life and stress. That's one of the things. We can take a look at, are we sleeping well? That's another thing. And then I take a look at like, what has my nutrition looked at like lately? Because, just recently I did the same thing and I took a step back and I was like, well, Megan, you've been eating out so often, like, and even if you're making healthy choices when you're eating out, that's more portion size, like have bigger portion sizes than you would typically eat. It's going to be things that they're, putting into the food, like the fats and the salt and all the things that make our food taste so good, that even if I order healthy, they're going to be putting all those things in the food, which is okay with me on occasion. But like if I'm eating out 4 days that week, like that starts adding up very quickly. So that is one of the things I have to like always check myself on is like, am I actually like showing up for this healthier, eating and nutrition consistently? And sometimes the answer for me is like, no, I'm not. And there's, that's going to happen sometimes. And just getting back into the process of like, okay, I'm going to go back to meal prepping some more meals for myself, really dialing back in on what my portion sizes look like and things like that. I don't meticulously track all the time. I think from years of actually measuring all my food from the fitness competitions, I have a pretty good eye for what that portion size needs to look like. So I think having some sort of structure where you can always go back and be structured for a period of time and then say, okay, I don't need this to rule my life. I can go back in and kind of make healthier choices and make this more of a lifestyle approach for a little bit of time until I realize that I've had a little bit of chaos in my life and I need to get back to the structure a little bit more. It's always an ebb and flow, right? So I look at my life, I look at my stress, my sleep. Am I actually doing my nutrition or am I eating out more or whatever the case may be? And then am I actually getting my workouts done? And what are the quality of those workouts? So if we have a lot going on in life and we have a lot of stress, a lot of times the first thing to go is our workouts, is being more active during the day. So, and that might not be the case for everybody. Maybe you do have like this minimum ground where you say, okay, well, I usually do 5 days a week, but I can always fall back. And maybe 3 days a week is your, minimum and you're able to kind of stay there. But then what is the quality of that movement? If we are getting that movement done, what's the quality there? Am I so tired and so stressed and so distracted that I'm just kind of going through the motions of getting that workout done? Or am I really honing in, having a plan and sticking to that plan and giving it my all that day, even if my all might not be 100% every day, it's 100% of whatever it is that day. So just kind of like zoning out and looking at each thing individually. To me, I'm like, okay, check. I am working out my minimum of 3 times a week. Okay. Well, I can work a little bit more on my nutrition. Like I said, getting back into the swing of meal prepping a little bit more and being a little bit more aware when it comes to my nutrition. Am I getting enough sleep? Am I drinking enough water? It's like go through that checklist in your head. And if you are staying like super focused, also maybe a plateau is just a moment in time, right? I don't always like to change things up immediately. Sometimes I'm just like, okay, I've checked all the boxes. I am doing all the things. Maybe I just need a little bit of patience here. Let me continue to show up in the way I've been showing up and see what happens after another 2 weeks, 3 weeks of this level of consistency. Is because maybe your body just needs a little bit of time. And the last thing is, again, not throwing everything out, but just making a little bit of a tweak. So if I realize I need to eat more protein, then I'm going to eat more protein. If I realize I want to, switch out like the level of carbs that I'm eating, then I'll switch it out for a little bit while and see how that works for me. But just a little tweak goes a long way instead of the other option, like crashing our calories down because we're like anything to get the scale moving again. Not anything to get the scale moving again, because we want to, again, maintain our muscle and our health as much as possible. So we just want to make small changes as we go. I think that's really the best take is to take a step back, look at all the pieces, decide on 1 or 2 little tweaks to make, and then wait and have patience.
Love that. No, so again, we have a lot of people on GLP-1s. Number one, okay, I guess the way I could ask the question is, should patients who are taking GLP-1 medications have a different exercise routine? Or I guess, what would you recommend for someone who is on GLP-1s? Specifically, would you tweak their exercise program a little bit more? Would you add more strength training, more cardio? Like, what are your recommendations?
Yeah, I think I mean, I always go towards adding more strength training. Again, not everybody is going to love strength training the way I do, and not everybody is, and I would rather like some level of activity in various places where it's like, yes, I asked you for the minimum of 2 days of strength training a week. And if that's like the thing I hate the most, then I can like integrate other things and hey, I'm happy with that. But for me, more strength training is always better. If I can get that up to 3 days a week, 4 days a week, hitting those muscle groups, not only that one time per week, but 2, 3 times per week is going to help us again, that stimulus for change that we're creating during our workout, that helps us gain and maintain as much muscle as possible in that recovery phase. So yes, if you're taking GLP-1s, I would increase how much strength training you're doing and really focus on like on challenging yourself with that strength training. It depends on where you're at in your level of experience with strength training. If you're a beginner, then obviously we might start with body weight movements and some light dumbbells. But really over time, we need that progressive overload. We need to start challenging ourselves more and more. For many people, especially women, a lot of times it's like a fight, again, that mental shift of they're like, well, I don't want to pick up anything heavier than 10 pounds. I'm like, you pick up something heavier than 10 pounds every single day, I bet you. And we need to get into those heavier weight selections slowly over time, challenge ourselves with those weight selections. But we do need to make that challenge, because if we don't have the stimulus, if we're not getting to that point, then we're not going to see the changes that we want to see. So yes, I would absolutely like increase the strength training there.
Thank you for the recommendation. So as we begin to wrap up, I do want to emphasize our mindset a little bit. Can you talk to us a little bit about how what role mindset plays in achieving your fitness goals? And can someone stay positive and motivated throughout the journey? So let's talk about mindset.
Yeah, mindset is so important. So with our mindset, I think a little bit of a trap we get into is that we feel like we're going to be motivated all the time. And the reality of that is literally nobody is motivated to do this all the time. And there are going to be times that you're more motivated, and we should take advantage of those times and really get the most out of them. And then there's going to be times that you are less motivated. And I would say, like, again, setting that foundation of the very minimum that you can do to still get that kind of minimum effective dose of exercise, like having those foundations in place is really important to just keep you moving forward, because we're not going to feel motivated every single day. It's just, it's a lie, to be honest. I go through the same thing. And I always say, so I've been working out like 23 years now. So out of 23 years, I always say, if I look back at 23 years, I see a whole lot of consistency when it comes to my nutrition, when it comes to my sleep habits, when it comes to my workout habits. I see a whole lot of consistency over 23 years. But what if I zoomed in a little bit and I looked at a month, a random month out of that 23 years, or even further, I zoomed into a random week out of that 23 years, a random day out of that 23 years. Am I going to see the same motivation and consistency? Like maybe, maybe not. Like there's probably plenty of months and weeks and days during that 23 years that I wasn't motivated and I wasn't consistent, but I always very quickly came back to it. And I think that's the thing that we kind of need to get in our head is we're not starting over all the time. Sometimes we fall off for like a few moments, and we don't realize that we could just get back into it really quickly. Like, okay, I haven't been working out for the last couple of days. I just need to get back into it. That's fine. I didn't fall off. I didn't fail. There's no failing at this as long as we're continuing to try. And honestly, I think anybody who's on this call or listening to this is somebody who is trying to be their healthiest best self. So I think patting yourself on the back a little bit and giving yourself the praise for the effort that you are putting in is a really important part of that, because we forget about that part. We're constantly looking at the things that we haven't been doing well and that we're not doing. And we never really take a look at, but I did show up in XYZ way. And so there's a balance. Sometimes we need a little bit of a kick in the butt. And sometimes we need that grace with ourselves. So having that grace, having that balance can certainly make a difference in our motivation and how we feel about working out. Um, and moving forwards in a healthy direction.
Mm. Well, I do like measuring. I think measuring anytime you're trying to achieve a goal is very, very important. And as part of our kits, we're going to start sending these out next week with our GLP-1s, which allow people to track their measurements. Because I think it's really important to track your measurements and not focus so much on weight, but also like your body. Are you losing fat? Are you, are your measurements going down? But besides the inches, what else should individuals track as they're trying to achieve their goals, their health goals?
Yep. So yeah, I mean, you know, I think that whatever your relationship is with like measurements and tracking and the scale and things like that, like I want to make sure first we're mentally healthy and we have a good mindset around those things. If at first we're just getting moving and moving forward in that health journey and measuring it by how our clothes are fitting or something like that instead, that's great. And certainly the measurements are a great tool in our toolbox to say, I am gaining the muscle, I am losing some of the weight that I wanted to lose. So as long as we have a good mindset around that, and that's always something that we can work on. But then also outside of that, when you're starting to work out more, and starting to really get into a good flow, a good routine, we can start tracking our progress and how much weight we're moving, how we are recovering in between sets, like because we start to find that instead of being like super out of breath and unable to recover for a few minutes in between sets, all of a sudden we're like, we're resting for 30 seconds and I want you to rest more in between sets. But we rest for 30 seconds and we're like, we feel ready to go all of a sudden. Like that's an indication that your fitness level is improving of how fast are you recovering between sets or even between workouts. So our strength, our recovery, you're going to start to see that your movement patterns are better, that you're getting more range of motion in your workout, that you can lift heavier weights, that you have just a better quality of movement, more core strength. So when you're doing your workout, just be very aware of looking for these things because they're everywhere, especially as beginners. We find so much improvement so fast to be excited about. So take advantage of those little things that we can look at and say like, wow, I'm really doing it. And I'm really seeing the changes that maybe aren't on the scale yet, but I'm getting stronger. I'm getting faster. I can do exercises that I wasn't able to do before. And so many improvements are happening.
Oh, well, thank you, Megan. So as we wrap up, any other tips, tricks, any last minute words that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, going back to maybe a little bit more of detail into what our workout truly needs to look like. And I do have a little thing for you guys as like a little freebie. But in general, our workouts, again, there's so many ways to kind of like split up a workout, right? So I just asked you for 2 full body days a week as our minimum. But if we wanted to do 4 or 5 days of strength training a week, then we can start splitting it up by body part. We could do push and pull days. So there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, so to speak. And same thing here. There's many different nutrition options that can work for many different people. There's also many different ways to kind of structure your workout program. But I do kind of want to talk about the general like idea of what an exercise day should look like, what a strength training day should look like. So for me, I'm looking for some main compound exercises. And I think we've kind of gotten away from some people think that compound exercises are putting 2 exercises together, and that's not what a compound exercise is. A compound exercise is when more than one joint is working at that exercise. So a squat is already a compound exercise. Our hips, our knees, our ankles are all working together. And so a lot of muscles are getting stimulated for that growth and that metabolic response. So squats, overhead presses, rows, deadlifts, lunges, all of those things are compound lifts. And then we can sprinkle in some isolation lifts, those single joint movements like a bicep curl, tricep extension, things like that. We can kind of sprinkle those in on the top. The guidelines I'm going to give you a really wide guideline and then I'm going to shrink it back in. So the wide guideline is we're really finding that the rep range matters less as long as we can find a point between, like, let's say 1 and like 30 reps where we are approaching failure with our weight selection. So approaching failure means I feel like I can do 1 or 2 more reps after that moment that I stop. Like I stop and I'm like, okay, I felt like I could have done 1 or 2 more reps after that. So it's stopping before complete failure where we're like dropping our weights all over the place, but we felt like we could have done 1 or 2 more reps. That's really what we want to feel when we're hitting that, like, again, approaching failure feeling. So like I said 1 to 30 reps. Nobody wants to do 30 reps, I should say. Nobody wants to do 30 reps because we were working out all day. So I like to be right in that standard, like 8 to 12 rep range, with that same idea that I still want to be approaching failure within that. So finding a weight that I can do for about 8 reps, where when I'm done with 8 reps, I felt like, okay, I might have been able to do 1 or 2 more, but I'm stopping at 8, is that perfect weight. And then over time for several weeks, 4, 6, 8 weeks, I'm going to keep on seeing that goblet squat, let's say. And over time, with that same amount of weight that I used to be able to do 8 reps, I'm trying to get up to 12. That's the range, 8 to 12. I'm trying to get up to 12. So the first week, maybe I can do 8. The next week, maybe I could jump up to 10 reps. And I'm stuck up there for another week. Maybe the next week, I finally get up to 12 reps with that same weight that used to be heavy for 8 reps. Now that's my indication that I need to go up a little bit heavier in weight. So now I can increase my weight and I can probably knock myself back down to that 8 reps of it being really hard at that 8 rep range. And then I start the whole process over again of trying to get up to 12 reps. So the nice thing though about that, like 1 to 30 rep range though, is everybody has different equipment and different things that they're working with. So if you're at the gym, you might have enough weight to where you can find something for 8 reps, 8 to 12 reps that works for you, that challenges you in that zone. But what if I only have 10-pound dumbbells at home? Well, maybe I can do enough reps within that 1 to 30 rep range where I'm starting to feel that push towards that failure feeling. And that's really what we want to see, is when we start feeling that feeling of I can only get 1 or 2 more reps, that's when the stimulus to change happens. So that's a really important part. And I wanted to make sure everybody here had an accessible jumping off point. So I actually created 2 little like splits for you guys. They're 2-day splits, just like we talked about. I'm giving you the minimum effective dose. So I created a beginner 2-day full body split and an intermediate 2-day full body split for you guys. So if you go to my Instagram page, which is Megan Davies Fitness, MEGANDAVIES Fitness, and you DM me, it has to be a message to me, and say EllieMD. That's all you have to say. It will automatically send you the link to get those workouts for you guys. And so that's something that's just dumbbells and you can do at home, that I wanted to send you guys off with, so you have some sort of jumping off point from this call.
Oh, thank you so much for doing that, Megan. That's really generous and sweet of you. So, guys, make sure you go follow Megan at Megan Davies Fitness on Instagram. I think Brenda posted the link. So please go follow her, send her a DM, and she will send you this guide. That's really, really nice of you. Thank you, Megan, for doing that for us. Um, Wow, we're at time. Thank you so much for all of your advice and tips. And this is the piece I think we're missing right now. We have a lot of patients on GLP-1 medications, but they're not getting adequate nutrition, protein, and fitness. And it's so important for educators like you to come on and tell us the importance, not only the importance, but also what to do. So thank you for creating that guide. We really appreciate everything that you shared with us tonight. And thank you all for joining us this evening and giving your time and having the desire to learn more. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everybody for joining tonight. I really appreciate it.